Oh, I've been waiting for this one. Hello everyone, today I'm going to make a Sheriff Jimmy doll, which is kind of ironic, using this doll. And there's a very special reason for that. Okay, I'm kidding, kinda. I'm going to use this doll. It's a Monster High doll that I have customized before, but I'm redoing it. First, I'm going to start out by actually giving him, some color. I don't know if this is completely accurate. I think it's a bit lighter on the actual skin, but this is the closest I could get it. I'm sorry. And I think if you're living in a mesa, you would be a bit tan. Now, of course, I know paint does rub off on joints, but he's gonna have clothes to cover that up, so it's fine. Now I can move on to blushing the face. Blushing just makes it look more realistic, like an actual human. And I'm only blushing the face because, like I said, the rest of the body is going to be covered up. Also, this is a bit awkward, but the neck would stick at certain points, so I would have to do this. This was a common occurrence. And moving on to the face. I start out by putting a few coats of white over his eyes. All the eyes so far have been either blue-yellow or blue and yellow, so this is the first doll to have different colored eyes, so that's pretty cool, I guess. They are plain brown, but it's a good change. For the shading in the middle of his eyes, instead of using a lighter brown paint, I used black paint and mixed it in with the brown. It makes his eyes appear much darker. I outline the eyes and start painting in the lip color, which you can't actually see the difference on camera. Then I start painting in some eyebrows. I use a dotting tool for this for the accuracy. And then I paint them in yellow, because it's the closest thing I have to blonde. Then I paint his scalp yellow as well. Now that the face is done and the hairline is all filled in, I can start with actual hair. I glue wefts in a spiral around his head, like usual, except I don't give him a part, I just make it all spiral around one point on his head, which you'll see in a second. As tempting as it is to just say done, I have to cut it, even though on men's haircuts I have no clue what I am doing, and this is just my best attempt. I'm really speeding through this one. For his boots, I have to actually make the boots because I don't have any doll-sized cowboy boots on hand. So I start making them out of foam and sew the pieces together. I'm going to be using a factory-made shoe as a cover, just because it'll make this a lot easier. I take the pattern and hot glue it onto the shoe. This ended up being pretty annoying because for whatever reason, foam likes to make hot glue take forever to cool. The reason I'm using foam and not clay, in case you're wondering, is because foam is flexible and will actually allow the doll to get his foot in the shoe, whereas with clay, the clay would crack and break. There were a bunch of gaps around the foam, so I filled it all in with hot glue and smoothed it out as best I can, then go over it with a base coat of white. Once the base coat is dry, I can continue on with brown. Also, for anyone who wants to know who these shoes belonged to previously, I am going to be entirely honest when I say I don't know. With that, the boots are done and I can move on to the rest of his outfit. I take this pair of pants, and I'm not actually going to use these pants because he has blue jeans. So I take the pants and I seam rip it apart to get the pattern out of it. This is actually really helpful when you take factory-made doll clothes and take them apart to get the patterns. It's a lot less finagling and trial and error. I get the pant legs apart from each other, then unroll this one. Once I've got that unrolled, I trace the shape out onto a piece of paper and I'm ready to cut it out of my fabric. I don't show this part, but after I cut it out, I fray check all the edges. In fact, with most of the clothes I make, I do fray check them because, when it frays, it gets really annoying, and even if you hem them most of the time, they still fray on the inside, and it's really just not fun. Pants are actually pretty easy to put together. You take a pant leg, fold it in half, and sew along the edge. Then, once you've done that, you take both your pant legs and just put them together. And then you've got a pair of fully functioning pants. For a shirt, I already had this pattern in my hoard of doll patterns, but then I realized that I could just make a pattern using the tunic pattern that I love using for every single doll. So I do that, and I trace it out onto this white fabric and use my invisible ink marker to trace around it. I absolutely love this marker because I can draw whatever I want, and it disappears after a while, so I don't have to worry about any marks on the fabric. The reason I love this pattern so much is you can just fold it over, sew up the sides, and you're done. That's the shirt complete. I just need to put some snaps on it. I do the exact same thing for his vest, which I made out of this faux leather. I realized I could have also just made it out of brown fabric, but this seemed fancier to me. I cut this little star for his badge out of some foam and put some yellow paint on it. After the yellow paint, I painted over with a couple layers of gold paint, and then just glue it onto the vest. I cut out a strip of the same faux leather with a little metal hoop on the end for his belt. Then I just put that around his waist and put the belt buckle on. I made the belt buckle the exact same way I made the star, just some foam cut out and some yellow and gold paint on it. His hat ended up being the trickiest part to make. I just found this pattern on the internet. If I didn't, then I would have a lot harder time finding it. I used the same foam and cut all the pieces out. Then I have to hot glue them all together. I definitely could have optimized this pattern more to make it easier, like making notches so that it's easier to glue all the pieces together. But I have to be very careful not to burn myself while sticking the patterns together and making it look seamless. The same thing you just saw me do, I also do for the top of the hat. I also make a little dip in the top of it, then the base of the hat is done, and I just need to paint it brown. I realize I could have also made it with fabric, like I did for previous hats I've made, but that didn't really occur to me until after I had already made the base for the hat, and I did not feel like doing that all again with fabric. I paint on a blue stripe off camera, and also this little medallion thing, and just glue it onto his hat. And the hat's done, then I cut out a little triangle for his bandana, with a snap on it to make sure it stays on. Now, the wings are definitely something I wanted to discuss. At first, I thought about not doing the wings at all, but I didn't like that. Then I thought about just making it a cape, like I originally thought it was, like it was a cape disguised elytra. But then he got them back from the Fae and they were actual wings, so I decided, well, I can't just make a cape, I gotta make wings now. So I have settled on a wing design, which you'll see later. For this design, I need to create a base which I make out of popsicle sticks, like I did for a previous project. I take these pieces of popsicle stick to make a frame. This is the frame that the wings will sit on and will basically be like a backpack. I paint them brown to better match the doll, and also so they look more like Minecraft sticks. I drew out the pattern and shaped the wire into that. This is a different way than I made previous wings, because they're a different design than the previous wings I've made. For this, I settled on moth wings because of how the star opens up when he opens his wings. That was what really fueled this design. So once I form it out of wire, I leave a little bit extra on the end, then twist the extra together and form a hoop out of it. This hoop is going to be essential for actually sticking the wing onto the frame. Once I got all the pieces laid out, I put fabric over them. This part was pretty easy. I just had to trace around, cut it out, use fray check, and I did have to use fray check because I couldn't hem this, obviously. You would see the rough side of it. Then I just had to whip stitch it onto the frame. Now, since I made this out of bright pink wire, I have to go around all the frames and paint them brown. And I really wish I had just gotten brown wire to do this, because it was very tedious, since I had to do multiple coats and then seal it in. And speaking of painting, I have to paint on the star on the wings now. I paint on half stars on each of the larger pieces of wing. I put on a white base coat because the fabric likes to soak up the paint, so if I just put straight yellow and gold on, it wouldn't show up as well. I had also debated if I should do a gold for the star or just plain old yellow for the star, but after seeing the yellow, I decided, yep, it needs to be gold. Don't show me painting it gold because you already saw me painting it white and yellow. To attach it onto the frame, I made some holes in said frame and then just used screws to screw it in. Using screws will also make this posable. The last step for the wings is to hot glue some straps onto it. Like I said earlier, this is going to be like a backpack. But the doll isn't quite done yet, no. We still have to make one more little thing. I have several of these mini dolls. One of them has a cowboy hat, which we will be using. And one of them, which you'll see in a second, doesn't have a stand and also doesn't have any arms. I swear I didn't take her arms off, that's just how she came. So I'm going to take the hat and this doll and make a tiny little sheriff. First things first, gotta get the hair off. It's all sculpted on, so I had a much harder time getting it off this time. For her buns, I take this saw and just try to saw them off. Though if I did it with just this, it would take absolutely forever, so I also take some clippers to finish the job off. For the arms, it needs an armature wire first. An armature wire. Yay. So I glue that in and add a lot of extra glue to make sure it's nice and secure. Then using clay, I can fill in the holes on the head and also the arms, which are currently little twigs. am not confident in my sculpting abilities whatsoever. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'm a very bad sculptor considering how lumpy this turned out. But, practice makes perfect, so I wanted to try it anyway. The arms were surprisingly hard to sculpt because of how tiny they were and because the clay kept slipping off the wire. So I had to finagle and squish it into place a lot for it to actually stick on. After the clay dried, I put a base coat of white over it and then do basically everything you just watched, but instead of sewing, I paint. I paint on the same skin tone, obviously. In all the videos where these little guys are featured, it said that he looks exactly like the real sheriff, so I had to use all the same colors, obviously. And I said obviously twice. 3 times now, actually. And now I start painting the hair yellow. I probably could have used more yarn wefts, but I had already sculpted it on. I do the eyes the same way too, filling it in with brown, and I swear I make the pupils bigger than this. And so far, it's looking great. Then I add little eye shines, because it is a tiny little doll. I paint the boots brown, then paint on the jeans and the vest. The shirt's already white, so didn't really need to paint that on. I also do the same process for the hat, and at this point I did a star. I actually did all this first and before I looked at our reference image, so I thought it was originally a star on the hat, and by the time I looked at a reference image, I had already glued it on and made it. So yeah, we're stuck with that now, but now they're both done. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. See ya!